look, Jack, thank you so much for joining us. It's really great to have you along again. You were with us a couple of years ago in 22. We just got an insight there with the great sizzle reel. Great way to kick off on Tuesday morning. I guess, can you please give us a rundown for anyone who may not be familiar in the room or watching this? FB Society, what you guys do and what it comprises.
Yeah, we kind of, what we like to think of ourselves as we operationalize ideas, and we kind of, how to make experiences in dining. I mean, I think that everybody wants to say, casual dining's dead. We disagree. We think it's actually like super robust. We think it's an opportunity to innovate. We think it's the opportunity to create and have fun and have our guests have fun.
Okay, and can you give us like a bit of a rundown of the brands that you have in the family?
Yeah, so we kind of put it in a couple different categories. We have some fast casual. It's called Son of a Butcher. It's kind of a really fun slider bar, sort of a retro idea. We have some experience in that category. We're actually the founders of Velvet Taco. We also have what we call polished casual concepts like Haywire, 60 Vines, Mexican Sugar, Whiskey Cake, Ida Claire. And then we have our food hall business. In our food hall business, we have one out in Plano, if you've ever been to Legacy Hall. We have another one in Broadway, in Nashville at 5th and Broadway called Assembly Hall. And we're working on a couple more. And then we're always working on the next couple things. So that's kind of what we do, is we're always working on what concepts are coming up next.
It's really overwhelming just how much you've got happening, and it's really exciting. And you mentioned all of those concepts there. We've got some images that will play on loop now, and you'll be able to see what some of these look like in the background. And hopefully it will become apparent, why I've had you to come back, and it's as we have this conversation, but within the context of our program. But I want to sort of take a step back. I did date you a bit when I wrote the description for this. 40 years ago, you started as a server. That was your entry to the industry. Tell us a bit about your background, and
So this is the second job I've ever had. I worked for the Pappas family for 25 years. I started off as a waiter, went to school, and grew up in that organization. And about 16 years ago, left that organization, and really, my partner and I kicked off, FB Society, and just kind of since then have just been sort of dreaming up ideas and sort of collecting talent and taking the steps to grow.
Okay, yeah. You're a lifer in the restaurant industry.
Oh, for the rest of my life. I'm never going to retire. This is just too much fun.
Well, and that's very apparent when I talk to you. I want to swing back to that actually. But so where are you at right now with the how many restaurants do you have? What's the current count? And
at the end of this year, we'll have 42. This will be our largest year of growth of brands, existing brands. And, it's interesting growth in itself, because everybody in this room, I love John's big, hairy, audacious goals, because the people in this room right now, construction and development is taking up an inordinate amount of time in any organization, because if you take John's slide of population growth, you could replace the people and put restaurants, and that slide would probably look pretty similar. There's just been an incredible amount of growth. But the pressure on construction and development and what you guys are doing in this room, there is innovation, there is new ideas, and we need them, because the headwinds of cost and rents and all the crazy things that are holding us back from really being the best company you can be is what we're all up against now.
Yeah. The title of the session, Creating and Executing Experiences Never Imagined, which is actually I stole that right from the mission statement for FB.
I love it.
How'd that come to be formulated, and then I guess what does that mean for you, and how does that guide what you do when you come up with these restaurant concepts and as you grow?
I think innovation and making big decisions takes courage. I mean, for us to go into the city of Plano and propose a city block in the suburbs that's going to be sort of our version of what the new anchor tenant of a development should look like, between Legacy Hall and Haywire, a 3-story restaurant and a 3-story food hall. Then again, I don't have the construction expertise, and if someone would have really kicked me and said, don't put the brewery on the 3rd floor, I wish I would have listened, but in all those decisions, it is an experience, and it's creating an experience. And I think it takes courage to have big goals and to actually execute them.
And I want to come back to that. There's two things that I want to do with you today, and I think what you're doing there with those developments you mentioned and kind of multi-purpose use and creating experiences, I'll circle back to. But the two things I want to do is, one, dive into that more, and also two, I'd like to get your take on the industry, if I could sort of circle back to that now. I like to jump around. You know, we had you speak in 22 on our panel, and I just loved the insights that you brought, and so did our audience. That I like how you sort of say it how it is. But I guess, you know, it's been about a year and a half since you spoke at that edition of Restaurant Spaces. How have you seen things change since then? How's the customer different now, or is it pretty different from, you know, where we were back then?
Oh yeah, I think it's fascinating what's going on. I mean, today you have a customer. If we just talk about different kind of concepts, right? You've got this really emerged fast casual away from QSR, and I think it's fascinating that a customer today. I heard Chili's the other day advertising, you know, $10.95 for a burger, a drink, and fries. But a customer will drive by Chili's and go to a fast casual and pay $15 for that same thing and wait in line and not get service. And I think what the big change is today, the customer's starting to really push back on value. If you're not thinking about value and your executive team is not really putting that into the mix, it's a big mistake. I think that there's certainly a huge change happening with the customer, and value's relative. It could be for the quality of food, they feel like they're getting a value. It could be for just for sustenance. But I do think that the customer's really evolved in right now where, call it the beginning of 23, they were just ravenous. They were just, everybody's same store sales was positive. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's hit soft sales, and it's changed a little bit. And I also think in casual dining, I don't think of it as one big lump. You know, private equity, a lot of the data companies, they put all the casual dining in one lump. It's not. You know, that's where I really feel like there's an emerging polished casual that's coming out, that's differentiated, and it's alive and well, and the consumer is very much attracted to it because it doesn't have the white tablecloth pricing, and but it gives an interesting experience that they can really enjoy with their families and go back to on a regular basis. And so that's one of the emerging classes I really see in dining for sure.
If you're an existing restaurant brand, then I mean, how would you respond to that? I mean, how should they be responding to that? Thinking about how the customers, that relationship's changing and the circumstances are changing.
So as a person that creates brands, certainly health is like a big issue. But I kind of, when I think about what I heard yesterday, say from Travis, I totally disagree with, like, I think people, why the sales of supermarkets are so high is because people actually do love cooking at home. And they may not want to do it every night because they have busy lives, they have dual income families. But there's no way that I could ever imagine a future of restaurants that you take the sex out of the restaurant. I mean, it's so cool to see humans actually making food for other humans. I just think that that's super special. The other thing I completely did not understand owning multiple food halls is how you could build something with all those hoods and vents and kitchens for $2 million. Because, man, I'd love to do that because ours are a lot more expensive than that. So it's just interesting. I just didn't really, and I just don't see the future like that. Machines making our food and completely dehumanized.
Yeah, actually, we have a clip when you were talking on our panel last time, and I brought this question up. You know, I think I showed a picture of a sort of automated robotic unit, and I said, you know, what's your take on it? Do we have that clip on hand that you might be able to just quickly bring up?
And I think a lot of this stuff like looks sexy and looks cool, and then a robot shows up next to my table, and it's just like, I don't get it, you know, because I just don't think it's as cool as maybe other people do. I think that craftsmanship, talent, you know, like, look, I do think labor is an issue, and you do want to make inroads on that. But at the end of the day, any business that can't train people to be talented and do things that make it unique and special, it does turn into a commodity, and then it loses any specialness that it ever had. I just think I have a different take on it, and I think this whole automation, why don't we work on training people, skills better, And then we're taking what the government is giving us in some of these states that have stupid laws. As a group, we're the largest employer in the United States. Why don't we push back and get them to have smarter laws that fit restaurants better, since we're their actually biggest employer? And instead, we fold and we just do stupid things to, like, Flippy the hamburger and stuff like that, instead of actually teaching humans to make gourmet burgers and exceptional products. So that's where I kind of differ from some other people.
Well, I mean, and I do like that. And I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people in this room kind of might feel the same way or have, you know, just the passion behind the food. I think it's interesting that we see the industry now. 2 years ago, you would, you know, companies would sort of talk about automation as in, you know, it's going to augment operations and, you know, it's not going to replace workers. Whereas I think as things have started to change in the last few years, they're more blatant. It's, you know, I mean, we see some of the concepts. It's kind of, and they're more open about talking about that. So you don't think? I mean, you can see why they sort of embrace it though, because it's like, it seems like an option that
it's a ruse, right? So yeah, of course they want to replace workers, and at the same time, what technology's done, and there's technology in all of our businesses. I have technology in my business, but it's how to help facilitate it and how to make it better and faster and train and and facilitate the customer experience. And I think you need it for that, and that's utilizing it the right way. But personally, my ambition to replace people with machines is just a silliness. I just think I don't want to do that. I want to help humans have the best life they can have.
Yeah. Well, and let's move it to a slightly different perspective within this discussion then. So how do you think about, I mean, the other side of the labor equation is not just being able to, you know, replace labor, but it's also finding good quality labor too, that people who are enthusiastic want to be there and genuinely passionate about it. It's a hard industry. Like if you're working in a kitchen, I mean, that's one of the toughest jobs around, and especially sort of more quick service concepts, it's kind of hellish, you know, like there's just a million things happening. The customers are awful sometimes, and the rubbish is piling up and things are going wrong. How do you get people enthused? How do you approach that in terms of, you know, getting people passionate or finding passionate people and making them proficient in their job?
I think that, you know, if in a miserable environment, work can be miserable. You know, an exciting environment that, you know, you feel cared for and safe. You know, that's where you could probably perform your best work. And there's a sense of pride when I worked in the kitchen and I was younger. Like at the end of the night, it may have been incredibly. I might be, you know, working the grill, and I might have actually singed my eyebrows, but man, it was like I was proud of what I did and how I did it and how I accomplished it. And I think creating a working environment that people take pride in what they do is what we all strive for. And I think, you know, I think those memories that you have of when you worked, they're fond memories. You know, they're things that you're proud of. And I think the people that are working in your restaurants today feel the same way.
Mm-hmm. Who here has ever had a job working actually in a restaurant, or maybe got their start in the restaurant industry, working as a server or something? Yeah. I mean, you guys probably relate to that feeling. I think it's kind of an easy argument to sort of throw out, or maybe it's a lazy thing, and maybe every generation has this, but it's the kids these days. I mean, how do you think about the sort of and we've mentioned it quite a bit in the program here at Restaurant Spaces, Gen Alpha, Gen Z. Is it different, or does everything that you just said apply?
So I have a different perspective than a lot of other people. Everybody wants to complain about the kids. I just find kids are smarter than I ever was. They're way smarter. My kids can beat me in chess. Like, it's just, I think kids today are so smart, they don't put up with the dumb things that I put up when I was younger, you know? And so because they have a voice, and a lot of times that voice is to a manager who really doesn't want to hear it, you know? And I just think that if you actually listen to what they're saying, it usually makes a lot of sense. And so I think we're in great hands of the future of people, and the younger generation. I don't always agree with what I hear, but I have to think about being open to new perspectives, because whether you like it or not, that's the future of our job force, you know?
Yeah, there's no escaping that.
There's no escaping it.
Yeah. And I mean, look, and also, you also have said all this stuff about embracing automation and tech, but you're not anti-tech. I mean,
no.
I mean, when it comes to this, in this regard, I know you have had great success with training and through gamification. Can you tell us more about how you've been rolling that out and the results you're seeing from that?
Yeah, a little bit of plug because I'm an investor, but I also use their product. I think it's amazing. It's One Huddle. It's gamification of training. We use it in all our restaurants. And but to build on that, I do think we're really studying AI. We're working with a couple companies. How do you ensure incredible experiences? How do you get better training where AI could be used if I have a new employee rolling sushi, he can actually see if the AI could actually buzz the chef if something's not quite happening right. AI today could be in my dining rooms if somebody doesn't get greeted in a certain period of time, buzz the manager, let them know. There's just, and then understanding our business, the flow of the tables, when they're full, when they're not. And what we're doing is really leaning into AI to get different insights than we've ever gotten about our dining rooms and our kitchens in a more unique way. And then even taking some of that information for our teams, because I don't want to ever be Big Brother, but how do we gamify some of that information to really, I think what happens in a restaurant, you have all these servers, right? And the managers tend to like the servers. When I ask them who's the best server, they always will say, oh, it's this guy. And I say, why? Well, he's always on top of it. And then when I actually find out, he's the guy who picks up all the shifts when they need him to, okay? But when you actually look at who's the really talented server, it's the one that can really sell, better bottles of wine, better entrees, more connection with the guest. And, a lot of times that person goes unnoticed. And so using data to really recognize where the really talent in the team is and how they're doing it is really important.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's, the feeling when you have a good server as a customer or you have a regular place. And I love when I have a great server or waiter, but it's hard to quantify, but you think that's possible into the future?
Yeah, I call it connections over transactions, right? Like how do we really measure how our team connects with the consumer? What that means is the consumer's going to come back more frequently, kind of feel special about the experience. They're going to come back for their birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, or just when they're entertaining friends.
Yeah. Great. Well, let's continue into that then and go back to building experiences. I think that's a nice segue. You have such a diverse and dynamic portfolio, and your track record is impressive. I mean, where do you get your ideas from? Do you know a guy? Or you're the guy?
No, it takes an army, right? And it takes talent. So I think that one thing that we're pretty generous about is building a team where we recognize the team, we get the right people on the team. For high-level talent, we offer them equity in our organization. I just think that today it's a talent game, and I think that I always like to stack the deck with a higher level of talent and surround myself with people way smarter than me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How do you know that an idea is going to stick then? How do you sort of get to the point of execution? How do you prove it? How much do you use... how much time do you spend with an idea before you kind of start executing it?
A lot. I mean, it's sort of you run it by people, you think about it. I'm kind of like critical thinker, so I think certainly what could go wrong, what could go right. But you just really think deeply about it and just sort of dream what it can be. And I just have that skill of seeing something that's on a piece of paper come to life. And I think it's also super fulfilling and rewarding. And when you can bring a bunch of people into the room and as a team, you look back and you say, yeah, that restaurant, Velvet Taco, it's got 60 units, it's in 15 states, and we're the small group of people that created that. There's something about that that's super fun.
Yeah. When I saw the news the other day, Clay Dover talking about they've got a huge development pipeline ahead, right?
Oh yeah.
That's really exciting for them. I guess, can you maybe, since you mentioned it, take us into what that process looked like, within the sort of amount of time that we had? Like, how did that idea, what was that like, that process?
It's interesting. We had this idea that we knew we wanted to do tacos, and we had never done fast casual, and this is 12 years ago. And we really thought about what, we have a process that actually Jason and I have talked deeply about called DNA, and it's differentiation, nuances, and attitudes. So the idea of really at the time differentiating tacos, and 12 years ago, we were like, and I'm a big traveler, so I like to travel a lot. And I love international food. And so I was like, you know, what if instead of Mexican food, we put international food and we took, you know, Indian and, you know, just different experiences and put each taco had an experience. And we kicked this idea around and we thought, okay, there's got to be an analog, someone in the country who's doing this. And so we actually traveled around, you know, multiple states. We were for sure we would find it somewhere in California. We couldn't. And then we tried it in Dallas, Texas as our first one. And ironically, our first review, someone came in from the Dallas Morning News and called us an abomination to Mexican food. So, but it didn't matter. People loved it and really enjoyed the different experiences and flavor profiles. And we were a 1,300 square foot restaurant that had a chef in the kitchen actually creating new experiences. We called them WTFs. Weekly taco features, of course, and those WTFs were, you know, created by a chef who was standing there when you walked into it. And we also we thought about this 1,300 square foot building, like how can we just really just mess people up, you know? So we took rotisserie as our trompo, and then what we did was, as we were roasting those chickens on Monday, we had this deal that we would do half-price chicken, right? So we would have people get the half-price chicken. They had to go to the back door. They had to knock on the door, fork over like $10, and they would get a whole chicken to go on Monday. So we had a line of people out the back door for chicken, and then we had people out the front door for tacos. And it just really kind of like, again, this idea of like doing something different, not trying to be like everybody else was what really made the difference in creating that brand and making it special.
Thank you for running us through that. It's very cool. You know, I think we talk about authenticity in a concept a lot, and sometimes that can feel like it's not tangible. It's kind of out of grasp. So I like this DNA approach that you take to it. It feels very related to that.
Yeah, if you guys have been to Plano, like the idea of opening Whiskey Cake and 60 Vines right next door to us, which was actually the first locations of them. And we wanted to design them that it felt like completely, like this wasn't owned by the same company. It was a radically different company. And every project that we do, we don't really have a trademark look. I don't want a trademark look. I want to feel like we're like people look at it and go, wow, this is really different. Or, you know, but they would never associate it with our group, because I think that for me wouldn't be what success looks like.
I guess I just cognizant of the time, I want to sort of shift gears into the things that you might be thinking about now. I don't know what you can't announce anything, right? No, no. I guess, are you sort of thinking about applying? What are you working on? What are the things that you're curious about? I mean, can you talk about hotels at all? Or?
Yeah, I'm working on an interesting hotel project. The idea, when I look at hotels, I feel like we're in the second inning of the whole boutique hotel movement in the United States. I think that, you know, I hate to go to a hotel and I have to go out to a really good bar to get a proper old fashioned, you know, and then I have to get back in my car. And I'm kind of inspired by this idea of really food service in hotels. I think, like, personally, if somebody had stocked my hotel room with a really good tequila or something, I'd be far more inspired to try it, you know? And I just have this idea of how we take a hotel experience and really, instead of doing it with hotel people who are just trying to break even on a service, is really do it in a more inspired way, that we really try to create something exceptional on the F&B side that really makes it a far more interesting experience.
And speaking of experiences, I want to touch on your food halls for a bit. You've got two currently, right? One in Nashville, and the other is in
Plano.
Plano, yeah. You know, how does that sort of funnel into your idea creation, rolling out brands, and using that as kind of an incubator space? And then I guess, you know, what's your plans for that moving forward? Because I know that the way that you described, I haven't been there, the Nashville location with the live music and everything. It's a special experience, right?
It is. Has anybody here been to Assembly Hall in Nashville? Yeah. You know, it's this idea of when we created the original food hall, and I think there was a tour. Did you guys go by the one in downtown LA? or has
The Grand Central Market, yeah.
So in 2016, when we first had this idea, a developer came to us, and it's that whole like kind of Southwestern napkin story, you know. The developer came to me and he goes, Jack, he goes, I have this block, I'm going to do something special. And on the napkin, he said, this one block, I really want to make my legacy. And he called it his fun place. He goes, you're one of the funnest guys I know. We need a big idea of what to do here. And my business partner and I were over in Holland, and we saw this big old train depot. And back then, what they did was they actually had the owner of that they called it Food Holland, actually ran the bars. And so we came back with this thought of the sort of restaurateur's food hall. And of course, we went to Chelsea Market, which, you know, is still one of the best food halls in the world. But, you know, it's interesting. Super busy lunch, no business at dinner, no bars, you know, so didn't have that experience. And then we went to the downtown LA one. It was the same thing. Super busy at lunch, not that busy at dinner, no real bars to speak of back then. And so when we created our food halls, the idea was create entertainment and live music and a programming of the space. And so in doing so, we'll drive, and our food halls will run about 1,000 people a Friday night just to see you know, a band play. And then we'll have 20-something stalls. We have full-service restaurants, and it just sort of captures this wild experience that people can enjoy and really have something that, you know, their family can come and they can have a little bit of everything.
You have one opening in New York, or you're working on one? Or?
We're working on one. So we're thinking that we're going to go big. You know, a couple, you know, suburban dads kicking up to Manhattan would be a great story. So we're kind of moving that direction. So yes. So but the big idea with our food halls and why they're differentiated is really it's built around experiences, but it's also built around music and entertainment and just, you know, multiple reasons to go back on a regular basis.
Awesome. Well, we're nearly at the end here. Jack, you know, I guess in our audience, we have a lot of folks that are in quick service or fast casual. You know, what are some of the things that you've talked about today or just in what you do that they can sort of draw from when they think about the future of their business?
I think a lot of it is like even food halls as a place to use ideas. I think that, you know, in our original food hall, I've created a few brands in that food hall, and one of them is Son of a Butcher, which started in a food hall, and now I have the third one under construction in Fort Worth. And I think, like, again, this idea of innovating within your space, I think that the importance of construction and development to your companies is probably, you may not know how important it is, but the amount of dollars that the company's spending on CapEx, the lifeline of opening new restaurants, if you can't be creative in figuring out how to do that in a cost-effective manner, then the company can't grow. So it's a lot of pressure on, you know, the teams, your teams right now to be able to do that. And it's going to take innovation, new ideas, getting the right talent around you to be able to do it.
Wonderful. We've got a few minutes. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to throw up here? Yeah, we could just get a microphone down. That'd be wonderful. Just wait for that. So.
Hey there. My name is Bruce Brock. I'm from Detroit, and I am absolutely fascinated by your idea, and I'd like you to come to Motown and build one downtown where we have a very vibrant restaurant scene, and build one around the Motown concept. It's an amazing music and restaurant scene down there, and just ripe for something like this.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Yeah,
I'll be happy to
set
help
my real estate team in that direction.
That's what I do is restaurant and real estate. I'd be just thrilled to be a small part of helping you do this.
You know, real estate now is such an critical part of what we do too, and you know, because you can't undo those mistakes in your company, right? So we all know that, and it's just such an important part of you know, the teams that you guys all work with, and you just can't afford a mistake today. It's just too expensive, and with the headwinds of cost and finance and other things, it's a critical part of the whole equation to make things work.
You're absolutely
There was
right.
another question over here, is it? Yeah.
You had touched on it briefly, but you know, given that representing here is QSR, fast casual, or full service restaurants. The value equation today is really, really challenging to define for not only the restaurant company, but for the consumer. And I don't know if anybody's gotten it quite right. And so I'd love to hear more about how you think about the value equation and bring it to life.
Yeah, because I think it's nuanced, right? I think a consumer going into a full service, polished casual restaurant has one view of it. But I think a lot of what the consumer does is he compares, right? So, and at the end of the day, he just writes at the bottom what he paid. And he's got to walk away feeling like he got value for that. And sometimes, that could be a $500 meal at Uchi, or it could be a $10 experience at Chick-fil-A, and each experience is different and unique. And within that experience, though, the people that are running that brand are the ones that really need to understand the touch points that make that customer feel value. And I think that a lot of restaurants tend to shy away from being honest with themselves and actually reading their Yelp reviews and all their online reviews. And the reality of it is, man, there's so much data, so much insight into those, if you really take them seriously, that'll really help, make those little like 5 and 10 degree shifts that help, any individual restaurant or restaurant group help really manage their value equation.
Alex with Tzatziki's. I live in Nashville. Beautiful building.
Thank you, Alex.
How do you decide which brands to put into the food hall if there's major competition for it?
It's a great question. We actually have a team. It's a curation team that actually goes into the local markets and really kind of tries to meet the local people and, bring their brands into the food hall. And then as far as what brands that are ours, that are a full service brand, like in Nashville, we have a 60 Vines on the roof, and I think it has something to do with like bachelor capital of the world. It was a good decision to put in 60 Vines. So I think that, a lot of times it's like a sense of place and where we are and the vibe we're really trying to create. But ultimately among the stalls, we really try to pick out the best and the most interesting concepts that are in the market and do a lot of research on it.
Jack, we're just about out of time. I just have one combined question, I guess, as you look towards the future and just with your finger on the pulse of how the industry is right now. I mean, is there a mindset or an approach or something that you feel like doesn't serve the industry and you'd like to see kind of go away, or maybe an external factor? And also then on the flip side, what are you most excited about when you look ahead?
Yeah, I think, look, if you want to hear bad news, there's bad news out there. When I read this the other day, 80% of the restaurants that are open close in the first 5 years, 60% close in the first year, right? And if you're reading that, it's like, why the hell would you ever go in the restaurant business, right? So, but the reality of it is that it also shows that there's a lot of people that don't really put the same thought and energy and time and effort as your organizations that continue to grow and beat those odds that are doing it or out there. And I think there's something in there of, I'm a competitor. I like to maximize things. I like to make things better. That actually gets me up and excited every day. And when you have the right team around you, I mean, it's a fun business. And I think there's a lot of people out there trying to make it unfun, unsexy, boring, whatever. And I think that this is a business that the reason I'm in it, because I don't know, I walked into a restaurant and thought, man, I could do this, and I think that that's why most of us got into the business. So I think that we need to be a part of keeping it fun, keeping it exciting, and looking out for the industry. I think the it's going to be around no matter what, but what shape it's in is where I think as restaurateurs collectively, we give way too much power to our governments, to lobbyists, to other people, and I think it's hurting our business, and I think that, for the number of people we employ, we should have a bigger voice.
Wow. Jack Gibbons, thank you so much for joining us. This is really cool. Yeah, always a pleasure. Yeah, likewise.